everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, here to introduce this week's special bonus episode. That's right. So typically ABA Inside Track is a podcast about behavior analysis and behavior analytic research. And every week we pick a topic and we review some research and we discuss it just kind of like they would in an old-fashioned journal club. But some weeks, because of a schedule or because we have some content that we think would be fun for our listeners, we switch it up just a little bit. And that's going to be one of these weeks where we have a special bonus episode. So it's a little bit of a different format. What you're going to be hearing very shortly is audio from a talk that we did at the Thompson Center for Autism conference this past October. The topic of the talk was on self-care for BCBAs. Now, you will notice that as much as you love hearing maybe all three of us, myself, Diana, and Jackie, I unfortunately was not able to attend the conference this year. So Jackie and Diana had to do all the hard work. They did an amazing job on the talk. So when I'm done talking, you'll just get to hear them for pretty much the rest of the episode. So sit back, relax, and enjoy ABA Inside Track's talk on self-care from the Thompson Center conference.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Kyle, for that introduction. So we're really excited to be here today. Thank you for coming to our talk. I'm Diana Perry Cruz.
And I'm Jackie McDonald, and we're missing Rob Perry Cruz because work-life balance. I'm just kidding. He just couldn't come today. So our host is missing, but we're here to represent.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different. I feel like it's sort of pertinent in that, or no, not pertinent. That's not the right word I want to use. Appropriate, I guess you could say, that he couldn't come because he was at work. Right, so it kind of ties into the whole theme of work-life balance. But I'm also excited that Jackie and I get to present this one for the two of us, because I think that we have a lot to say regarding this particular topic. So if you haven't heard of us before, we are a behavior analytic podcast, and we have, I don't know, at this point, like
180 something episodes.
Yeah, of our show. So I feel like this is loud.
You're fine.
Okay, so you can check us out there if you like what you hear here. But that's not our only job. So Jackie and I also are professors at Regis College in the ABA department. We are, in fact, the ABA department.
So no one is representing the ABA department at work currently right now. Just, we're here.
Yep, we're here instead. So that's we're BCBADs, and that's sort of our area that we're bringing to this. And then, although Rob's not here, he did help us in preparation for this talk. So his background is that he's duly SPED licensed and then behavior ABA licensed person working in the public school system. So we kind of have different backgrounds that we're bringing to this. And the other thing to know, I think, about our podcast is that we talk about lots and lots and lots of different topics. So some of them are related to autism or ID, but a lot of them also are pulling from different areas. And we wanted to come into this world of podcasting so that we got a chance to explore a lot of these different topics, right? So every week we're like, what should we talk about? We find a new topic. Sometimes it's a topic that's near and dear to us. Sometimes it's a topic where we're doing a lot of background research to learn about it as we go. So we've learned a ton in the context of doing this podcast, and it's been exciting. So it's intended to be informational both for you, the listener, and it's also informational for us, the speaker sometimes. And we hope that we can bring some of that to this topic too, because work-life balance is an area that's not been researched a ton in our field, right? But it's something that's important to all of us who are attempting to make those types of balances in our lives. So we, pulled research from different areas to kind of put this together and learned a lot along the way. And we intend for this to be a little bit more like a podcast format, right? So Jackie and I are going to take turns. We might chat together, interrupt one another a little bit, and hopefully that will be entertaining as well as informative.
I'll push her aside and be like, get out of the mic, this is my turn.
Okay, I'm going to make sure that everything is okay in the chat. Can you guys hear? You can't see us.
But we don't do that. They do that back there. Nope, we don't have to do that. Remember, we have people for that.
Okay.
We are working through that. Yep, we got it. It's cool.
We look great.
It's for all those listening.
Okay. All right, so I touched on this in the last slide, right? Spoiler alert here is that we're not experts in this particular topic. I think that we're coming to it just as most of you probably are, from the perspective of, wow, I got a lot going on in my life. How am I going to get all of this balanced? I want us all to kind of be able to think about it from that perspective, right? Because every one of us are entering into this with a different personal workload, different components of our lives that may be more or less stressful at a given time, and different personal history as well. So none of us can speak with certainty about what's going to make someone else's life feel balanced. It's going to be personal to you, and some of this talk is a little bit about that type of reflection that one has to do for your own life and what your own goals and values are in order to feel as balanced as you can be. Oh, look, there we are.
So that we can navigate the waters of life. See, look.
Oh, that's the slide.
That was the slide. I put a water pitcher, and I was like, ooh, this is so good. It wasn't that good, but
it's good. It's good. It's good. Yeah. So some of the things that we might be talking about may be more referencing what you might experience as a new BCBA. Some of them may be coming more from the perspective of someone who is in more of a supervisory role. I think all of us have work that we likely can do in this area. And then the other piece that I'm going to present now, and then probably come back around to a little bit at the end here, they were talking about work-life balance from the perspective of one person, right? And what one as a single person could do in order to make changes to your own behavior in order to get your life as kind of balanced as possible. But that's really a small piece of the bigger picture, at least in my perspective, and how we should be thinking about work-life balance and what the expectations are and what the realities are with respect to the lives that we're trying to construct for ourselves. So we are here in, what are they calling it now? Late stage capitalism, right? And we're here in America, and many of us in this room are probably working moms. And I think it's important for us to recognize that there are many pieces of this big juggernaut of a system that we are all trying to fit ourselves into that don't work for the individual person, right? They work for the companies that make money, but they don't work for us as individuals who are trying to make that type of balance. So there are going to be pieces. Can y'all still hear me?
yeah, you're doing
It
great.
changed. Okay.
It's because you step back. You got to not step back.
Don't say
Pro tip.
You got to lean in.
Lean in.
Yeah. I feel weird. Okay. No, I forgot what I was going to say, but there are going to be pieces that we as individuals can do, right, to make changes in our own behavior, and we're going to talk about those. But I also don't want any of us to walk away from this discussion thinking, I'm going to be able to fix it all. Because part of being able to take back a little bit of control and balance in your life is recognizing what you actually can't control. And there's a lot of pieces of this big old system that we're in that we actually can't control. So I want us to recognize that as well. And then the other, I think, really important piece here is that we're coming into this talk talking about work-life balance and self-care, right? And it's also important for us to recognize that even having these types of discussions about attempting to make these balances in our lives is coming from a point and perspective of privilege. Because we are under the assumption that we have some level of control related to the work conditions under which we are in, right? That we have some level of power, being able to go to our bosses and say, this isn't working for me, that's not working for me, my schedule needs to be more flexible, right? And there are many, many situations in which someone may not have that type of privilege to be able to approach their boss and ask that question, or have extra leisure time built into their schedule that they might be able to spend doing a preferred or relaxing activity because they're working many, many hours a week to try to make ends meet, right? So there's going to be limits as far as how we can apply what we're talking about today, and recognizing that there's privilege built into some of those expectations and some of the ways in which I think our society typically talks about self-care, right, that may ring really hollow for some folks. Okay. Anything else I should say here?
Got it.
Okay.
Ooh. I have a Mac. There we go. The thing is different. Okay, so let me come on this side. As a practicing behavior analyst and a department chair of a graduate program, I always get the question, Jackie, why are you working so much? Has anyone ever felt this? Does anyone ever get this? Some people, not many people in here. Good for you. You don't need to be here. Get out. Just kidding. I get it a lot, right? And I never know what to say. So I'm always like, and then like, well, the weather's beautiful outside, right? I'm deflecting there because I never know really what to say to someone. Do I really like have to go in there and be like, well, here's why I have to work so much, right? And when I started thinking about work-life balance in my own life and in the lives of my graduate students, I was thinking about, okay, why do we work so much? And it's no surprise that we're working so much because the demand for BCBAs has astronomically increased. Can you believe 4,000% since 2010? That's the latest 2021 Glassdoor update. I actually can't even believe that. I don't even think things went above 1,000%. You make that up, right? You're like, it's 4,000%. You're talking to like a toddler and their eyes get very big. But that's serious, right? And it's no surprise that we're working so much because we're needed so much, right? Also, we're right in the middle of a pandemic, unfortunately. And the pandemic has really hit our field hard, I think, across the country. And we're seeing that many agencies are experiencing staff shortages. Anyone else? No? Yeah, everyone's like, yes. Okay, y'all got work-life balance, but you're all experiencing staff shortages, right? Yeah, and so when you have staff shortages, you have to probably pick up the slack for other people, right? So you're doing more than your job. You're doing like 6 people's jobs. Been there, done that, did not like it. And it's really hard to then try to limit or talk about how your work is bleeding into your regular life. It's usually not your regular life bleeding into your work, right, in these situations. And then I wanted to think about how our field is really rapidly growing to meet the needs of both of these issues, right? The demand increase, the shortage, and then not to mention that we want to do a good job, right? Most of us got into this field because we want to help people. We want to help the people that come to us to ask for help, right? We want to feel good about our job. And I think that's not very different from the nursing field. And there's been quite a bit of research in the nursing field looking at why nurses work so much, right? And Hadida, in just this year, discussed this shortage in the nursing field. And I think we can make parallels between the two, right? Practitioners in both fields find it hard to separate your work life from your personal life, right? Someone's like, who are you, Jackie? I'm like, I'm a behavior analyst. And that is it, right? It's like, not really, but
full
right,
stop.
Full stop. It's like really hard to separate who I am as a person and who I am at my job. Also, our jobs are emotionally exhausting sometimes, right? Like, we need to be present for everyone at all times. We need to be on. We need to be, if you're working with little kids, like that joyful, excited, when sometimes you don't want to be, right? We have this desire to help our clients, our desire to please our employers, because this is the job of choice, usually our career, that we've wanted to do. And so no wonder we're working so much when we have all of these pressures put on us. Also, your job is a huge responsibility. So my main job is to teach graduate students, right, that they're going to be BCBA soon. And I always start in one class in ABA training and supervision that, like, you are responsible for every single person that works with you. Your clients, your RBTs, your behavior therapist, shit, I don't think I'm supposed to swear, but you kind of have to right there, right? Like that is a huge responsibility. When any client comes into your care, you're responsible for their future, right? When I say that to my students, everyone's like, one person left at one point, and I was like, you'll come back, right? Not only are you responsible for your clients' care, for their future, for their well-being, you also have the enormous task to build rapport with families, right? You need to get on the same level of the families that you're working with, establish rapport, establish empathetic listening, right? Because we know that when we build a relationship with the people around the client, that interventions are more successful. Interventions have bigger impacts. But man, that's also kind of like a crazy thing that we're tasked with, right? And no wonder these two big things lead to high burnout and stress, right? Burnout is characterized by exhaustion, both mentally, emotionally, and physically, frustration, complete dismissal of your job, right? You stop caring. High stress levels can lead to a whole bunch of illnesses, right? And a recent study by Plantabo and colleagues looked at 2 out of 3 early career BCBAs have experienced moderate to high levels of stress in their first couple years of working at the job. So no wonder we're all stressed out, drinking coffee, staying up late, right? And no wonder you're here at this talk right now to talk about how you can get some things under control, right? So I think one thing that you can do to start thinking about work-life balance is my favorite meme, by the way. Oh, Mufasa. Is to decrease high levels of stress and burnout. Like, right, if we decrease high levels of stress and we mitigate the factors that related to burnout, we're probably going to have a better platform to build a work-life balance. I think it's important to note that it's going to be different for everyone. Like, I love reading research articles. It's like my jam. So if someone told me like after hours, if I was like sitting on my couch and I couldn't read a research article, I'd be so upset. Like, that's one way that I relax. Creepy, I know, but not for everyone, right? So I think it's important that we're thinking about this as an individualized approach, just as we would our clients. I recently, on my way to self-care, got this book on Amazon called Enjoy Old Age by Skinner. I turned 40, right? I was like, uh-oh. So, and this is like a book when Skinner wrote when he was 83 years old, right when he was about to die. And just kidding, he lived for like 7 more years. And he talked about how when people are excited about things, they start planning for them, right? So he talked about when you go on vacation, what do? You like find a place to stay, you look at all the restaurants, you learn a new language, you're like jazzed up about it. That's not how it happens with old age, right? We're like, oh, it's happening. I woke up and I have like a bad back and a sore neck, right? But we haven't planned for it. And so Skinner talked about how we should view old age as a problem that we should be planning for and a problem that needs to be solved. And I would then stretch that in a weird way, that we should be thinking about work-life balance as a problem that we currently have in our environment that needs to be solved. I'm going to pull in, Green and Reed in 1996 did an article on indices of happiness, and they talked about how they tried to measure happiness with persons with intellectual disabilities. And I think we can glean some of that and use that to identify times in which we may feel happiness, right? So they defined happiness as, my favorite is smiling, laughing, or yelling while smiling. That's my life. I'm always yelling while smiling, right? So taking those pieces of indices of happiness and then maybe objectively taking a step away from your life and looking at events and stimuli that lead to those indices of happiness. Make a list. Here are all the times when I feel objectively I'm happy, right? And looking, maybe you're going to also expand that and be more covert, like times I'm feeling happy, right? You can define it however you want. This is all about you, right? Not anybody else. And also identify times in your life where there are times that are not necessarily making you happy, right? There might be some aversive stimuli, some context. Sadly, we can't get rid of all of those, right? Aversive events such as like billing, doing session notes, driving an hour to work in traffic. So thinking about those aversive events and then maybe surrounding them with more appropriate or things that make you happy to make those events less aversive. And so I think having work-life balance, essentially take-home point before we even get to the end, is having more environmental variables where you demonstrate indices of happiness and less where you do not.
Can I just say one thing in there?
Sure.
Too, is I like what you're saying about indices. Phew, good. I hate everything you just said. No, I like what you're saying about indices of happiness, but some of you in the audience may be thinking, like, I don't have to be smiling, right, to be happy or to feel happy. And an article I read recently was referencing, even if you're watching a sad movie, you might be enjoying that, right? Like, you can enjoy things that don't necessarily make you feel happy. So it's not necessarily as simple as like, oh, only when I'm smiling am I feeling happy. And it's okay to think that it's more complicated than that, because it is more complicated than that. But the idea here is that we actually pause and self-reflect on what does make us feel happy. I'm doing a bad job. And what does make us feel stressed out and sad. Because I don't know about y'all, but I've been doing this job or similar related jobs for 20 years now. And you hit the ground running and you just don't stop, right? And you just keep going. And you're like, I'm triaging. And you get to a point where you're not reflecting on, how do I even feel? I don't have time to slow down and feel something. I have too much to do, right?
It's not on the list. Feel something.
Feel something didn't make the list today. But it is important that we do that and we take a minute and slow down and say, what are the things in my life that actually make me feel happy? Maybe it is watching a sad movie. Or maybe it's spending time with family, right? Or whatever it is. It could be anything. We're all individuals. But taking a minute to say, what is it about my job, my family, whatever. What are the other categories? Friends.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we will. That make me feel good. And what about these things are making me really stressed out? And allow yourself time to make that observation for yourself so you can then move forward into what we're going to talk about next.
Cool. So as we were creating this talk and discussion and thinking about it, we're like, whew, we are not being very behavior analytic. And we wanted to pull it back and so that everything that we're talking about, even if we aren't using behavior analytic terms, are all coming back to our basic principles, right? So in order to promote a work-life balance, you need to have motivating operations in place that are going to be more likely for you to engage in those behaviors that are going to promote a work-life balance, and then have some motivating operations in place that are going to promote the less likely behaviors that are going to make you feel more stressed out and burnt out, right? Stimulus control is key here, right? So you need to have discriminative stimuli in the environment to set the occasion for those behaviors to occur and to be reinforced, right? So if you are going to promote a work-life balance, however that looks for you, and whatever strategies you're gonna use, you need to arrange the environment in order to make those behaviors more successful, right? Because with stimulus control comes reinforcement, right? And we know that no behavior can be strengthened or maintained without that consequence. We all know that some things suck and some things are aversive and we don't want to do them, but we can make them less aversive through pairing of reinforcement, right? Like, I hate doing session notes so badly. I will do everything to not do them, even though they're very easy. It's like type. I just hate them. So what I've done in the past is pair them with thank you, with the big, like, yes, I hate them too. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do my session note time. I pair it with some Reese's peanut butter cups and a friend. And then I feel I'm like excited about it. I'm like, get Reese's peanut butter cups, right? I still hate doing session notes, right? But it's less aversive because I've arranged the situation to make it more likely that I'm gonna do it. Because I love Reese's peanut butter cups. Yeah. So as we're talking about these different strategies, I want you to think about how in your life can you make these strategies work, looking at them through the lens of the 4-term contingency, right? So you need to be thinking about the motivation operations in place. You need to be thinking about the specific discriminative stimuli that are going to occasion the responding that you want to see, and making sure that you are setting up the environment to decrease the likelihood that you're going to be engaging in the behaviors that you're probably engaging in right now, right? Breaking the cycle, if I was a motivational speaker. Breaking the cycle, or setting the occasion that those behaviors are less likely to occur because of the context in which you've arranged. By the way, when Diana showed me this, she made this slide, and when she showed this to me, I'm like, the left is totally me. Like, I love myself some massages, and fires, and wool socks. These will all represent self-care for me, except for the wine. Can't do wine all that much. And then I was like, what's happening on the other side? She's going to tell you.
Nice segue. Thank you. There used to be more of the picture on the bottom, and it was people reading a book. I don't know where the rest of their bodies went. It's just their feet now. But you still get the idea. So we wanted to bring in this concept of self-care, because often you hear work-life balance, and then you hear self-care, and they go kind of go together, and we're going to talk about a Slowiak study in a little bit that did some comparisons between them. But I wanted to bring in this concept of self-care at this point so that we can start to distinguish between what is self-care and what is not self-care, and then later tie that into how that may fit into your own work-life balance. So I really think that the things here, pictured here on the your left-hand side, I'm so bad at that one, are what we often think of as self-care, right? You get a massage, you're sitting by the fire, you're enjoying a good book. There's a big culture in our culture about drinking to relax, right? And so all of these things fit into that kind of relaxation category. And I think a lot of times self-care gets distilled down to basically mean relaxation. Take some time for yourself, right? And it is important to take time for yourself. And I don't want to discount the value of doing that, even though, like I mentioned before, there's some privilege in being able to take time for yourself. But self-care is bigger than that. It's bigger than just what falls into that category of relaxation. Because sometimes relaxation is what you need. But sometimes you actually need to do other things in order to better care for yourself. Our friend, Dr. Shane Spiker, did a lot of research in self-care. And I really liked the way that he presented this idea to me, because I hadn't thought about it that much before I heard him talk about it. And he said self-care is bringing you back to your own level of homeostasis. So homeostasis is like where everything's like good and equal, right? There's not one piece that's really far out of alignment. You're in that, like, your happy place. And it's easy to get misaligned in that way and get out of your happy place. And it could be for any number of reasons, but before you go to bed at night, when you wake up in the morning, if there's that thing that's nagging you, right? You're like, oh, God, I have to take care of that thing. Then you're not in homeostasis. Something is bothering you. So really, the bigger idea of self-care is addressing those things that are bothering you, that are keeping you out of homeostasis and from being, quote unquote, your best self. So I put some examples up here of the things that, for me, are often what gets me out of homeostasis. And they're going to be different for everybody. Because we all, I'm a very avoidant creature personally. That's really how I thrive. So I love putting stuff off. I am really good at putting stuff off.
She is.
Thank you. Until you get to the point where all you can think about is the thing that you're putting off, and then you absolutely have to address it, right? So recently, it's been a pandemic, right? We did that for like 18 months, and I was like, oh God, I don't think I've like been to the doctor or in any preventative care way for like 18 months. So then I finally, after, I do this with buying plane tickets too. I put off buying plane. I don't know why. It just like gets me. So every night you're like, gotta buy that plane ticket. Gotta make that doctor's call, right? So finally one day I was like, I'm doing it. I called like all my doctors and made all of my doctor's appointments, which is self-care in a couple ways. You actually do need to do that for your own physical health, right? Don't put off getting those checks. But also it was a thing that was like kept coming back to me, right? Like I really do actually have to address this thing. So that for me was a means of self-care. Another one, you may be wondering what in the world these pictures mean.
I did. I wondered.
Well, now you're going to find out. So another one, and this one is like maybe a little bit of a stretch, but so I have a family with 3 boys, and I make them dinner every night, and I have about a 33% success rate with dinner, right? And someone invariably says, "This is gross." And I say, "That's too bad." And then what had been happening is then they scrape that whole dish right into the trash can. And it just killed me, right? It's like, oh, it's like so wasteful. And now all of this food is like going in the trash. It's like so gross. Of course, should I work on having them eat their dinner? Yeah, we're working on that part too. But the other thing that I was able to do was finally, I've been waiting, finally this compost company came to my town. And I was able to sign up for composting. And I know it's not available everywhere, but when it comes to you, if you can do it, you should, because it gives you this adorable tiny trash can.
So
it's
cute.
only this big and has a little lid on it. And now we can scrape the excess food right into the compost bin, and I feel much better about it. Believe it or not, this was something that was really, really nagging at me. It was really bothering me.
She complained about it a lot.
I did, and I felt like, oh, we're being so wasteful, we're contributing to global problems, and I really wish that I was producing less waste, right? So this was something that was important to me, and I was able to address it and actually feel a lot better about it. And then the bottom picture is just meant to represent having tough conversations, because I love to avoid having tough conversations. This is an area of continued growth for me. And maybe it is for some of you are nodding your head, so maybe it is for you too, right? It's another one of those pieces that it's going to keep you up at night until you finally address it in a way that's going to be satisfying for you and for the other party with whom you need to have that conversation with. So those are examples of ways in which self-care may not look the way that you thought of it, right? If you'd been thinking of it over here on like the getting your nails done side, but there are bigger and more important ways in which we can help bring ourselves back down to our comfortable baseline level. Because we're only going to be able to be productive members of society and help our clients at work and be there for our families when we're at that productive baseline level. There we go. All right, so I gave you the definition from Dr. Spiker related to homeostasis, but Dorosiak also gave us this definition, which I like a lot too. When we think about self-care, they define it as a multidimensional, multifaceted process of purposeful engagement in strategies that promote healthy functioning and enhance well-being. So again, a little bit more complicated than maybe we often think about it. And we've had a few words so far in this presentation that for me have really stood out. The first one was when Skinner said you have to attack this problem, right? And the second one is the word here, purposeful. You might be like me in that I would love to just float by my life on a lazy river, right? Just waiting for things to happen to me. And then being able to complain about them when they do, that would be actually quite perfect for me. But that's not going to produce the outcomes that I'm looking for in my life, right? You actually have to be the one who is proactive and attacking the situation purposefully and with intention. So self-care is different in that way, that we need to be thinking about our lives in a holistic way and determining what needs work right now. The picture here, Jackie found for us. Do you want to describe this picture?
So it turns out this is a meme that the burner highlighted in red is everybody's favorite burner. According to this is like one of the top 10 favorite memes of 2021. Did not know this. Now I feel cool.
That one passed me by.
I didn't know. Yep, yeah, me too. But it is my favorite burner. It's not hers. So
no, mine's the left one, left front.
Well, Oh, that is the left front.
No, girl.
Okay, I can't do it. I can't do left and right. Didn't learn that yet. But right, so we were talking about burners, and
I can take back over.
Okay,
you just
great.
wanted to talk about them.
I did want to tell you the meme.
So you guys may have heard this analogy before, and it's okay if you have. But the idea here is that there are different areas in our lives, all of which need attention at different points in time, right? So if you have a 4-burner stove, then it works out kind of perfectly to think about it as 4 different areas of your life, and those are your health, your family, your work, and your friends. And maybe your life is binned up that way, maybe it's binned up differently, and that's totally fine. But the important part to take away here is you can't have all the burners on full blast all the time.
Your house will blow up.
House will blow up. You don't have that much energy. So you're going to have to pick and choose what takes front burner, what takes best favorite burner at any given point in time. And like I said before, part of recognizing, or part of self-care and work-life balance is recognizing that something may have to take a back burner for a period of time, but it doesn't mean it's always going to be back there. And it doesn't mean that you can forget about it because it's on the back. Eventually, you're going to remember to bring it back around to the front. But things trade places and take turns as far as who's getting the most attention, and not feeling guilty if something needs to take attention at that particular moment in time, as long as you come back around to everything else.
So when we were looking at different articles around self-care and work-life balance, we found this amazing one that just got published, I think in June, and it's by Slowiak and DeLongchamp. And so what they did is they surveyed 826 active practitioners at all levels, from RBTs to BCBAs, BCABAs, BCBADs, and they asked them questions related to work-life balance and its relation to self-care, burnout, and high work levels of stress. And what I did is, so they had 6 different categories that they looked at, and I actually made one category the professional self-care category and made another one like your personal self-care category. Although they probably can intermix, I think it's important to make the distinction that work-life balance doesn't just happen at work, right? Work-life balance needs to also happen in that second part called life, right? Oh, I just sounded like a MTV like DJ, called life. Okay, so the 3 things that they talked about as correlating highly with less stress at work and more work-life balance are professional support, professional development, and job crafting. So professional support was defined as support that employees get to face job-related stressors and to collaborate with others. So if you don't have a professional support network at your job, this may be one thing that you can do to decrease stress, right? So find something or someone, I guess it's probably gonna be someone, that you can collaborate with when, stuff hits the fan at work, so that you aren't facing that alone. That could be your boss, that could be a peer, right? That could be a supervisee, it could be anyone, right, at your job. It's just a human being that you can interact with in order to help navigate these more stressful challenges that we're seeing at work. They called the second one professional development, but I added the enjoyable professional development, because professional development was defined as continued activities and training that promote increased competence at your job. But has anyone ever been to a professional development that you did not want to be at? Right? That is not helping me with my work-life balance. So I added the enjoyable part, because if you are learning about something that you want to be learning about, right, it's going to increase your overall well-being, supposedly, and it leads to better job satisfaction because you took the wheel, right? So we know that a lot of research looking at perceived job satisfaction doesn't necessarily correlate to your job satisfaction, but sometimes that's not the point, right? The point is that you want to have or feel successful and feel satisfied at your job. And then the third one was job crafting. And so this one has 2 components, and that includes discussing the job demands and your job resources. So job crafting is a way that you might be able to look at the responsibilities of your job and delineate what are the most important things about your job. What are the things that you value at your job that you can devote more time to, that might make you happier, that might make you less stressed, right? And craft the job that will be best for you. Again, obviously you have to do like billing and session notes and all those things, but if we can craft things that are meaningful, you're more likely to be excited about getting up and going to work. The second one is super huge, job resources, right? We need to identify what we need in order to get the things that we need. So I've been in many jobs where I'm like, I don't even have a pencil, right? And I have 5 children that I'm supposed to make sure they don't run away and are making academic progress and are happy and content, right? But I don't even have a pencil to take data, right? So identifying the resources that you need within your job structure to promote more, job satisfaction and less stress, I think would be really helpful. And then they also talk about these 3 areas, and I thought these fit more into a personal life category, right? So thinking about your life balance, I thought was super important. So life balance here was defined as having an identity outside of work, enjoying activities other than work, and having a social network outside of the people that you work with. Man, this one's hard, right? Like, I think that all of my friends I've worked with at least one time, like Dinah and I have been working together for like 20 years. Shh, don't tell anyone. But right, so it's really hard, but I think having an identity outside of work will have, if work is going badly, right, your whole life will not be going badly because you'll have something else that then you can look to or be supportive of. So establishing something else, like maybe you're a great Pokemon player. I've never played Pokemon, but maybe you are, right? Or maybe you love Hallmark movies and you know all of the plot lines. Great, good for you. There's an entire community about that. I will be part of that, right? But so it doesn't matter what you do, just do something different than your job. They also talk about daily balance, which when I read this, I was like, I am not doing this. So they decided that daily balance was integrating small tasks in your day that promote lower levels of stress, like taking a break, standing up, drinking water, like saying hi to someone, right? How many times do we actually
Eating lunch,
Eating
which
lunch.
you don't do.
I don't eat lunch. I've been trying better. I've been making these huge bowls. Then I forget where I put them, and then I don't eat them. Right? So remember where you put your lunch. It's in the fridge. Jackie, it's in the fridge. But I think those are awesome, right? Because at that moment when you're feeling stressed, you're like, I'm leaving. I'm quitting. I'm becoming a dog walker or a yoga teacher or both, right, to support my life. Getting up, walking around, like saying hi to someone may actually decrease overall levels of stress. And what they found is that was the case in this situation. And then the third category they use is cognitive awareness. And this is, I think, a lot of what our keynote speaker was talking about, being aware and being reflective of what our environment looks like, right? Taking a step back and objectively looking at what are the discriminative stimuli that are occasioning these behaviors that are unlikely to lead to my work-life balance, and also what are the specific stimuli that could occasion these behaviors that will promote this work-life balance for me. So I think those are the 6 categories that they talked about. Whoops. And so surprisingly, they found that engaging in these types of self-care strategies dramatically decreased burnout and high stress levels at both work and in your personal life. And in the qualitative study that Dr. Shane Spiker did in 2019, he interviewed 10 behavior analysts about aspects of self-care and found that during times when self-care in whatever form was lacking, they found diminished effectiveness at work, as evidenced by your boss telling you you're not doing a great job. Diminished care of your clients that you're working with, as evidenced by diminished client outcomes. And this one kicked me right in the stomach when I read it. Effect on relationships, both personal and professional, right? So if you are burnt out, you can't cultivate those relationships that you want to engage in. And so he found an apparent inverse relationship when self-care was practiced. So when self-care was happening in the life of these 10 behavior analysts, you saw the things up top do much better. This one's called Diana's Balls.
That's all that's written. Notes on the slide. All right, so I just wanted to throw this in there because you guys are probably, or maybe not, but maybe have heard of this analogy floating around, just like the burner analogy. So with the burner analogy I just told you, you might be focusing on one particular area of your life, but that's probably an inelegant metaphor, right? Because you can't ignore other areas of your life. You're always needing to address everything. Maybe you need to focus on one a little bit more. So this analogy goes a little bit further than that, and I do like it because it's the idea is that you're juggling a lot of balls. We all are juggling a lot of balls, right? And some of those balls are going to come from each of those 4 areas of our burners. But the story goes that some of those balls are actually plastic. It's not going to hurt anything if you drop the ball, sometimes. Some of those balls are glass. Those are the balls that you don't want to break. So taking a minute to examine what you are actually juggling and thinking about which of these balls are glass and the ones that I really do need to protect, and which of these balls are plastic and ones that it might be okay if I drop the ball a little bit on to pick up later, is going to assist you in prioritizing what you need to really be focused on. Because let's be honest, you can't focus on everything all the time, right? You're juggling these balls, but given the amount of things that all of us are focusing on, something's going to get dropped. And it's honestly okay if something gets dropped sometimes, as long as you're then able to strategize in the future and or pick up the pieces as needed. And it may be that there are plastic balls and glass balls within the work category and within the friends category and within the family category, right? And it's your role as the self-carer, right?
As the juggler.
Yeah, as a juggler, to discriminate which is going to be plastic and which is going to be glass. That's all I had to say about that.
Great.
I'm turning it back over to you.
No, you're not.
Oh, no, I'm not. Why did I think that?
That's okay.
Okay, I'm going to keep talking.
She's an avoider.
Is actually what I'm going to be doing. Yeah, that kind of flows right in. So I'm going to move us into discussion related to time management. This is one of those areas that often gets listed when we think about work-life balance. If we could only be better at time management, then we fit everything in and everything would be fine. Chances of us fitting everything in are not really that good, right? Let's be quite honest with ourselves. And so I think that it's important to kind of have that at the outset, right? Like, yeah, we can be good time managers, but also the lists that we need to do are very, very long. So there's going to need to be some moving around, an examination of those pieces to determine which are actually the glass balls on our list of time management tasks. And then the other piece, as I mentioned before, is I don't know about you, but I am very motivated by negative reinforcement. I love to avoid, and I'm quite good at it. But when you are living your life that way, you're always living in that period prior to the negative reinforcement, right? And what maintains responding in a negative reinforcement contingency is escape from some type of aversive stimulus, aversive component, right? So you're basically spending your whole life swimming around in aversive feelings. CMOR, right? And you either avoid it, or experience negative reinforcement by avoiding the task, right? Or you finally give up and do the thing and experience negative reinforcement from that CMOR by ending the task, right? But either way, you're just in that avoidance loop, right? Because there's always going to be something else. It's not like you're done. There's always going to be some other aversive thing that's happening next. So while this is a pattern that I definitely am trapped in, there probably is a better way to live. And that would be taking intention with the tasks that one needs to complete and tackling them head on, maybe doing the tough stuff first, right? So you're able to cross it off your list before it becomes that ultimate nagging feeling that you just absolutely need to escape from. So there's not a ton of research related to time management. Like Jackie said, some of the stuff that's out there is from the nursing field when we talk about self-advocacy and time management skills, because they also have very, very challenging jobs. Kearns and Gardiner took a look at time management skills. This is actually done with faculty, academics. And they found that those who self-reported better time management skills also self-reported higher effectiveness, higher morale, and lower work distress. Now, if you're a behavior analyst, you're saying, hang on, they're just self-reporting this, right? It's just like a survey, like, how good are your time management skills? And so I wouldn't put too much stock into the relationship that's established here, with the exception that people that felt that they were better at this, then also felt that they were doing better at their job. So there is something to be said for having a positive attitude with respect to your work-life balance. So you might want to have that as a takeaway from our talk. But what I did find to be pretty interesting about the Kearns and Gardner study is the way in which they defined having good time management skills. So when people reported that they personally felt that they did a good job on these 4 things that were listed here, that's what dinged them in the study as having good self-management skills. So the last 3 things, planning and prioritizing, avoiding distractions, and being organized, are like all the things that you and I probably would put into our operational definition of being a good time manager, right? Which totally makes sense. But the first thing, the one that I have highlighted here, really caught my eye because they included having a clear career purpose as being part of being an efficient time manager. How cool is that, right? Because it takes us right back to that earlier keyword that stuck out to me, which was purposeful. We have to approach our work from a purposeful perspective. We can't be Diana floating down the lazy river like I want to be.
It's your middle name.
I wish. I'm going to start putting that
Me too.
instead. Yeah. Instead, we have to think about what are our actual career goals, right? What are our goals for now, and what are our goals for long term? And when we're working toward those goals, particularly those long-term goals, we're going to have a higher level of satisfaction with what we're doing, even if the little pieces that we need to do to get to those bigger goals are annoying. Because let's face it, right? Like a lot of the stuff that you got to do day to day is annoying. But if you're thinking about it as stepping stones towards those larger goals, it makes it a lot more palatable, and it's going to make it so that you make the time to fit them into your day and think about it in a different way. So I thought that was a really important takeaway. And then fairly recently, Gravina and Nastasi wrote it's a blog for ABAI is where I'm pulling this from. It's just from 2020, related to time management and how one might work to fit all of these things into our busy lives. So I paraphrase from them, but they're thinking about things in this same way with respect to purpose. And they said time management is not completing a certain number of tasks in a certain amount of time. Right? It's not just crossing everything off the list.
As much as we like that. I know I do.
Absolutely.
I make a list, cross off things on the list, to the list every day.
Step 1, wake up.
Yeah.
But rather it means choosing our time purposefully and consistent with our values and goals, right? So thinking about why we're doing what we're doing and building from there, or working our way down from there, right, into what are the tangible, actionable things that we actually need to do during that day in order to reach those larger goals will change our perspective on what we're trying to accomplish. But they go on and give us some more concrete ways to think about time management as well. And this is going right back to that earlier point about we need to be active and ruthless in our protection of our time and how it needs to be spent. So they give us 6 different ways in which we can attempt to do this. The first one is forecasting, which means sometimes we think that a task is going to take us far less time than it actually takes to do. I don't know if you've ever been in that boat, but I definitely have. And I'll have a big list of things, 6 or 7 things, like big things, like, oh, I can totally get all these done today. And then at the end of the day, like, oh, I did 1.5 of 6 things, right? I was nowhere near as efficient as I thought I was. Some of that could be that I was distracted, but some of it also could be that I was grossly underestimating how long a task takes. So take some data for yourself on how long it actually takes you to write that report, right? so that the next time you need to build it into your schedule, you give yourself the amount of time that you need. Because nothing feels worse than to look at your list and realize you only did 10% of the things you thought you were going to get done that
or
day.
1%. That usually happens to me.
Yeah, a long list. And then the next part is building in buffer time into your schedule. That's the picture I have up here. So they recommend having, if you can, blocked out time that's like basically your catch-up time, right? So if a task did take you longer than you expected, you can fit it into that time. Or if, things always pop up that need to be addressed, they can fit into that block of time as well. But building it into your schedule and trying to protect that time as much as you can. Performing meeting audits. If you are in a position of power and you can remove meetings from everyone's schedule, everyone will like that tremendously. Sometimes you're not that person, but if you can be, then do that. Email management, this is one I have a tough time with. We tend to spend an inordinate amount of time managing our emails, often 2 hours a day. The recommendation is turn off your email and then schedule a time that is email time, right? So then you can not address them as they pop into your inbox, but rather only work on them during the email scheduled time. And maybe it's at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, depending on what you like. I'm quite terrible at this. When an email pops up, I see it. I want to respond right away, right, to get rid of that negative feeling. So as long as you have it set on your phone or on your computer to pop up right away, then you're likely going to stop doing what you're doing and move over to respond to that email. Some emails are urgent and should be responded to quickly. But others can definitely wait, and you will be much more efficient if you stay in the zone and in the flow with what you're working on, and then schedule a separate time to address emails later. They also introduced the idea of plate spinning, which was not a concept I'd heard before, but what I really liked. So the idea with plate spinning is maybe you have multiple projects going on or multiple people that you supervise or need to check in with. Block yourself out a period of time, either at the beginning of the day or maybe it's just once or twice a week where you need to do this, where you just quickly touch base with all of these different projects or all of these different people. And maybe it just involves you sending a quick email just to say, checking in, how's everything going, right? Or checking in, I know we were going to have this ready by Thursday, how's it going, right? Something like that. So you're just keeping all of those plates going in the air versus forgetting to check in on those and then realizing when it comes time for the meeting that no one has done the thing they were going to do. Or forgetting altogether that there were responsibilities that needed to happen. The other important part of plate spinning, if it's with people that you supervise, is that they see that you're invested, you're in touch with them, and they know that they can reach you easily if they need assistance. And that has a huge impact on morale at your agency, too. And then finally, the point about saying no. You hear this one a lot, saying no, and I'm going to touch on it again later. So I'll leave it at that. We have 15 minutes. I know. I'm going to go fast.
You're doing great.
And then the last piece I wanted to add related to time management was running effective meetings. So LeBlanc and Nozick in 2019 have a really nice article, if you want to take a look at it, which discusses how to run a meeting effectively. But the piece I chose for you to look at here, which I know is probably too small to read, is they have a planning checklist. If you were the person in charge of the meeting, the first question of which, is this meeting really even necessary? Check yes or no. Because a lot of meetings don't need to happen, right? Or they don't need to include as many people as are asked to come to the meeting, or they don't need to be nearly as so darn long as they actually are. So those pieces are important takeaways. They also include in this article, if you're the person running the meeting, how to respond to people who are derailing the meeting or making it run long, which I thought was a really nice component there. So check that article out if you happen to be the person running the meeting. I know if you are assigned to attend many meetings, then you're like, I wish someone else would read this article, but maybe you can find a way to slip it onto their desk.
Send it. Be like, oh my gosh, I saw this article. Do you want to read it? I know you love meetings. Or you could just put the checklist on the sheet. That's what I've done before. I'm the jerk. Okay, and when we talk about work-life balance, frequently when you're talking about self-care as well, people start talking about goals and goal setting. And I think sometimes when we talk about goals, we think about big, huge goals like our New Year's resolutions that we never do past February, right? Or, you have this like lifelong goal, and I think those are great as long as you've taken those big goals and made them into easy digestible chunks, right? If you think about it behavior analytically, goals are really just stimuli that perceive behavior. Goals are verbal behavior that might hopefully, right, set the occasion for the behavior of the goal to occur, right? And so when a goal is an antecedent reliably produces that behavior, it's going to contact reinforcement, hopefully, right? So ultimately that goal should become a conditioned reinforcer, right? Which will let you or make you more likely to set goals in the future. And I'm going to argue that goals should be set both in your personal life and your professional life, right? So when you talk about work-life balance, a lot of times what are your work goals? Right, but more importantly, what are your life goals? Like, what do you want to be doing outside of your work that's going to make you feel like you are meaningful and contributing to your community? Okay, so quickly, goals can be very effective, but they may be ineffective if the response that is produced following the goal is not reinforced, right? In Gill and Carter in 2016, they looked at the goal of increasing busing times, making it quicker at a busy pizza restaurant, because I guess they had problems with things sitting out on the table so nobody could sit down. We all hate that, right? When there's just things sitting on the table and we're just waiting. And what they found is that when the bussers picked up all the things, no one did anything about it. So guess what? The behavior did not continue in the future. And so if you've not set contingencies surrounding your goals and the behaviors that are going to make your goals become reality, if you've not set specific reinforcement parameters around them, don't expect them to last. If you've decided to make a goal that is too difficult, usually what happens with goals that are too challenging is that behavior stops altogether, right? If I was like, I've never run a day in my life and I'm going to run a marathon in a month, right? That's probably not going to be something that I can realistically break down into consumable chunks. And so what the research suggests is that challenging goals, but that are not too difficult, they're like hard goals, but not too hard goals, are the goals that are most readily achieved and most likely to be strengthened in the future. Has anyone ever had a goal set for them, like at work? You didn't want to do those, right? So make sure that if you're a supervisor or you're in your own life, that you have made the goal that you are going to participate in, right? So if your supervisor says, hey, I have this goal for you, be like, no, here's the goal that I want to do with your collaboration, right? Because goals will be ineffective if you don't have say in them and don't arrange the specific contingencies to make those MOs more likely that you're going to engage in those behaviors. And finally, the most important thing, I think, is when people set goals, either at home or at work, and you haven't specifically designated what resources or support you're going to need to achieve those goals, right? So make sure that when you are goal setting, that you've specifically thought about what are you going to need? Are you going to need time? Are you going to need money? Are you going to need a friend, right? Like, what are you going to need in those situations to make your goal become a reality? And I think that's something that we forget a lot about. And so when I read all of these goal setting articles, I thought to myself, how can I set a goal? What am I going to do here in order to balance my personal life and my professional life? Reed and Parsons discuss how performance has to be with a specific goal. So you can't just say like, I'm going to lose weight. You have to specify, like take that as like, okay, this is what I want to do, but then take it down to what specifically are you going to do to reach that goal. Set tiny challenging goals that are going to help you move towards your larger goal, right? I might consider those tiny goals your short-term goals that are going to get you to those long-term goals. I haven't found a ton of research behavior analytically about accountability, but I know in my own life, right, when I tell myself I'm going to do something, I actually can't provide the reinforcer for myself all the time. So that accountability really helps to provide that support and reinforcement for the specific goals that I'm setting. And some research has looked at feedback with your goals, and evaluated feedback, both corrective and positive, are essential in behavior increasing and maintaining at strength following that discriminative stimulus, which will then be the goal. And get buy-in, right? Get support from, if it's a home goal, make sure that the people in your home network know your goal, are helping you, giving you the resources and support. If it's a work goal, don't just keep it to yourself. Tell your boss, tell your supervisor, tell your trainees, right? Making sure that the community is there to provide those resources for you. Our last topic.
Okay, and then the last area that we wanted to bring into this discussion was personal self-advocacy. So again, there's not a ton out there. There's research in the behavior analytic realm with looking at self-advocacy skills for individuals with disabilities, but there's nothing that I located thinking about it from the context that we're talking about it here. So I really just brainstormed on this slide things that I think might be ways in which we could break down further what would fall into the category of personal self-advocacy in the interest of creating either a better overall workspace or that work-life balance that we're talking about. So how to say no to new projects, how to request help for something, how to indicate that you'd like to be paid for additional tasks that you might be asked to do, how to provide clear delegation of tasks or instruction to those that you're asking to do those tasks, leaving work on time, protecting your weekend and evening times, speaking up in meetings, calling out mischaracterizations, and limiting empty apologies. So some of these you may feel resonate with you, and some of them may not. But those are all areas in which we might be looking to add to the research. I did find this quote that I really liked from Jennifer Moss. It was in the Harvard Business Review, because this all ties into the idea of burnout, right? Work-life balance. And what she said was, we tend to think of burnout as an individual problem, solvable by learning to say no, more yoga, better breathing techniques, practicing resilience. The self-help list goes on. But evidence is mounting that applying personal Band-Aid solutions to an epic and rapidly evolving workplace phenomenon may be harming and not helping the battle. So there are some pieces of the idea related to self-advocacy and self-help and self-care, right, that we can control as individuals, but there's also a bigger picture that is really working outside of our area. So Maslach's Burnout Hierarchy brings in several different points of why people may become burnt out. And those are really reflected in the Gallup poll here. These are the top 5 reasons people listed. That's why they were burnt out at work. And you can kind of see a balance here. There may be some pieces that that you as the individual could address, how you might interact, how you might work to advocate for yourself. If you are experiencing unfair treatment or an unmanageable workload, or you want to get better communication from your boss. But there's also the larger environment in which you're working. And Maslach presents this metaphor of the canary in the coal mine. So the canary goes into the coal mine, beautiful yellow bird, singing away, right? And they come out of the coal mine, bedraggled, not singing.
Not yellow.
Maybe dead. Now, do we blame the bird for that change? Or do we blame the coal mine for that change? So if you see yourself as a beautiful yellow bird with so much to offer, and you worry that you are being toxically poisoned by the environment that you're in, maybe you are. And maybe that's something that's bigger than you. So to bring us home, I really want to think about personal advocacy skills in this larger light, right? So if you're someone who's early in your career, maybe you want to do something that's on the left-hand side of this column. Find the best boss. Find the best place to work. There's nothing that can replace the value of working at an agency that shares your views and values and supports and wants their employees to succeed. You can be the best BCBA that you can be, but if you don't have that environment, you're not going to be able to thrive in the way that you want to. And if you are an administrator or supervisor, then now you might want to look to the right side over here and be the best boss that you can be. Find opportunities for those under you to learn those self-advocacy and efficiency skills that they may need on the job. You're in the position to promote the culture that you want to see at your workplace. And it's also equally important to create space for historically marginalized groups, because it may be easy for someone to go up to their boss and say, I want changes to my work schedule, if they look like their boss, right? And there may not be additional biases present. But when you add in those other layers, then that conversation could become much more difficult. So it's important for you as the boss to create those spaces. And I would say if these are some of the things that have been worrying you at night, then all of this ends up being part of that bigger self-care picture as well.
I think our biggest take-home message is that professional self-care, personal self-care strategies are important. We should attack the problem, right? We should be purposeful. We should focus on our small attainable goals and really focus on an output that's going to be meaningful for you. So it may not be something observable. It may not be something that we as behavior analysts may categorize as like an overt behavior, right? It may be something internally, like how are you feeling? What are you doing? But thinking about taking a step back and thinking about how you as an individual are doing in your life, in your work life, right? And what are some steps that you can take to advocate for yourself so that you can be the best BCBA and best human that you can be?
Thank you.
Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed this bonus episode. We'll be back to our normal format next week if this is the first time you've been listening, where we pick a topic and discuss research related to it. It's a little bit different than, say, a conference talk, but not too dissimilar. So we hope you got a good flavor for the show. If you like the show or would like to hear more of it, please think about subscribing and leaving a review on any of your podcast platforms of choice. You can find us a lot of other places. We're on social media. You can find these posted on YouTube with the YouTube subtitling feature. You can go to abainsidetrack.com to purchase CEs for the majority of our regular episodes, as well as to find links to articles that we discuss in many of these episodes. And you can find us on patreon.com/ABAinsidetrack if you'd like even more special goodness, where we do a lot of bonuses. So at the $5 level, you can gain access to special videos, Q&A sessions, some live episodes that we're doing per quarter, as well as getting access a week ahead of time. And if you want even more content that's a little different than our normal episodes, you can subscribe at the $10 level to get access to our quarterly book club podcast, where we discuss a book at length. At the time of this recording, we should be very close to releasing our book club podcast on Look Me in the Eye, the memoir by John Elder Robeson about growing up with Asperger's at a time when Asperger's was not a diagnosis. We had a lot of fun with that. It was kind of the first sort of memoir, so it was a little different than some of our previous book clubs. But we have plenty of other ones of those. I think we're coming close to 6 or 7 of those on our Patreon page. So please check us out, patreon.com/ABAinsidetrack. Thanks to Dr. Jim Carr for recording our intro and outro music. Thanks to Kyle Sturry for his interstitial music. And thanks to Dan Thabit of the Podcast Doctors for his editing work. And of course, thanks to Jackie and Diana, who aren't here for these intros and outros, but did all the talking for this bonus episode. We'll be back next week with another full-length episode. But until then, keep responding. Bye!